Dark Ambient is a subgenre of industrial music, which sprang to life in the mid-80s through artists like Lustmord, SPK, Nocturnal Emissions, and Controlled Bleeding. Interestingly, there's traces of dark ambient music even in the 70s through artists like Tangerine Dream, Klaus Schulze, Throbbing Gristle, Pink Floyd, Brian Eno, David Bowie, Lou Reed, and even film director David Lynch, although these were certainly not consistent music styles for these artists. Now, obviously the origins of dark ambient stretch back far and wide, but as a more defined genre, it didn't really see that until the 90s. Nowadays, artists like Raison d'Etre, Desideri Marginis, Jenpax, Kammerheit, Sovartsen, and Northhaunt are very well-known names within the genre. Like any long-running genre of music, there are albums that have crossed everyone's radar, and perhaps even landed on their record shelf. But what about those albums that you missed? There's a lot of hidden gems within the dark ambient scene, and sometimes finding those hidden gems is one of the best parts about enjoying a genre of music. I'm here today to discuss a few hidden gems, which I highly recommend. Are you ready? Originally released in 2007 via Italian label Final Music, Verhören's Death is Safe is one of my all-time favorite dark ambient albums and a huge influence for my own music. Verhören was the solo project of Justin Ward, who came from Phoenix, Arizona. I got to know Justin a few years earlier when he began writing for my zine, Lunar Hypnosis. We bonded on a lot of similar music and often spoke candidly about our struggles with depression. Verhören's music is everything ranging from dark ambient to experimental soundscapes and even a bit of a dark wave-ish sound at times. The songs generally carry a depressive but still beautiful tone to them that feels like a gateway into Justin's thoughts and feelings. Every song on this album is diverse sounding, such as Alone in Autumn, which has an epic melody throughout its duration, with bombastic percussion in the background. The Procession and Highways Fade Like Dreams are another good example since they have guitar work mixed in. The opening song, Draining My Life Away, is indeed the darkest sounding piece on this album, and it's also the only one to feature any vocals. While the song starts out with a minimal synthesizer sound and whispered vocals, eventually a really gorgeous but dismal organ melody comes and goes throughout the remaining minutes of the song. Neptune Bleeding is one of the calmer, drony sorts of songs, but still holds an interesting sentiment. Nuclear Shorelines carries more of an ambient industrial quality, as well Autumn Null is just a short intermezzo in a similar ambient industrial vein. Ossuary sounds heavily influenced by Raison d'Etre, with its almost choral-like atmosphere, and another very similar sounding piece, Oceans Are Risen, follows it up nicely. A few of these songs also have samples spliced in them, and while I'm not familiar with their origin, the words spoken in them seem to gel well together with the songs. Death is Safe is an enormous record that simply flew over most listeners' heads, which is a tragic shame. However, you can find copies on Discogs ranging from $3 to $7 only. After Death is Safe was released, Justin continued to struggle with his mental health, but just a few years later, released a few songs on Last FM under the Neptune Bleeding moniker, although I don't think they were ever officially released, and as far as I know, he has not created any music since then. Released in 2006 through Ibon Records, Konau's Speech from the Shadows is one of the best-kept secrets in dark ambient music. Konau was a one-off Italian project from New Risen Throne's Gabrielle and Canaan's Andrea. Speech from the Shadows is a 50-plus minute mixture of dark droning ambience and field recordings that takes the listener deep into the dim shadows of oblivion. Try and imagine yourself slowly descending and being totally possessed by the darkest aspects of life. Slowly vanishing, whimpering, and eventually dying. Rain begins to pour down on you, thunder erupts, your blood boils, ghostly growls, and distant voices enter your ears. This is the end for you. Perhaps either a perfect bond or a marriage made in hell. Konau is stunning. These two gentlemen managed to take the listeners to the most desolate, deadliest, depressive places you can imagine. Standout tracks like Contemplation gives me the feeling of total seclusion, perhaps in a cathedral of sorts, whilst rain heavily pours down on me, while Deep is downright grotesque, reminding me a lot of the early Current 93 experimental material. Crawling darkness creeps up on you, revealing nothing behind you when you look over your shoulder, just to be consumed by all that is malevolent in this world when you look forward and face your doom. To call Speech from the Shadows anything less than a masterpiece would be criminal. I'll go the extra mile and simply call this one of the best dark atmospheric recordings ever heard. Similarly to the previous album, this album can easily be obtained for less than $10 on Discogs. Released in 2005 through the then relatively new Ural Hypnox record label, Finland's Zoät-Aon and their debut, Star Autopsy, is a record that deserves so much more attention. Zoät-Aon's music is built around ghostly, droning ambience, odd swirling industrial sounds in the foreground, ethereal textures, demonic voices, backwards speaking, and with a variety of percussion instruments, it creates a very ritualistic feeling and so much more that it's really hard to put into words. Jaakko Vanhala, the project's leader, takes us on one very unfriendly expedition through what could very well be hell itself. It's hard to pick a favorite, but Dark Grammar seems to be the one that really stands out. The song has the creepy ambience and this weird ringing sort of sound in the background, when suddenly at almost the 30-minute mark, some harsher industrial noise sounds enter the song, and those devilish voices come back again to haunt me. EXO is also very good, having an uncomfortable, cavernous sentiment to it, giving the listener the notion that something is lurking in the dark and waiting for them. The two lengthy ending songs, both over 11 minutes, also follow a similar path as the two preceding mentioned songs, and although I probably don't need to say this, Star Autopsy as a whole is bloody amazing. Zoät-Aon would go on to release just one more album in 2006, but Jaakko has also been involved in projects like Icorax, Zoät-Aon, Death Citadel, Placoid, Scrap Furnace, and he's released music under his own name, too. Simply put, Nothing is one of my favorite dark electronic projects. For about a decade, Jason William Walton explored a lot of different sounds under the Nothing moniker, everything ranging from dark ambient, death industrial, power electronics, noise, darkwave, drone, and frankly, occasionally he even tapped into sounds that are not easily identifiable. Curiously, he'd often blend it all together in a very effective manner. Silence Came Back In, Filling Jagged Spaces, was the last Nothing record, released in 2004 on Ibon Records. It became the last album, I suspect, because Jason's main band, Agalok, had really taken off around that time, and perhaps also because there were several other bands using the name. On Silence Came Back In, Filling Jagged Spaces, Jason explores a much more stripped-down, bleak, dark ambient soundtrackish and occasionally noisy and experimental sound with various percussions, monk chanting, some spoken vocals, weird distortions, and brief symphonic-like melodies intermingled. The album holds a strong soundtrack feeling to it, even though the first two songs are certainly more experimental and even noisy in nature. However, the majority of the album is bleak and calmer overall. While most of the synth melodies are slow-paced, they really are enjoyable sounding, and with the other elements making an appearance, it really makes for an enjoyable 46 minutes of music. While I greatly adore Nothing's debut album, The Grace of Audible, this release leans more in an ambient direction. The record evolves quite a bit as it plays out, but is still strangely cohesive. Silence Came Back In, Filling Jagged Spaces, flew under the radar quite a bit in 2004, and 20 years later, I suspect, nothing much has changed. However, I hope this mentioning of it provokes you to go and check out this highly enjoyable and unique dark ambient record. When I think about dark ambient artists and their origins, I don't really think about Australia, but maybe I should. Terra Sancta was a dark ambient project of Greg Good, who comes from Australia, and between 1999 to 2015 released 5 recordings, 4 of which were put out by Malignant Records. Let's talk about Disintegration from 2008. What would the apocalypse or the end of life on planet Earth sound like? I feel like Terra Sancta answers this question brilliantly on this recording. Although just 4 songs long, but still clocking in at over 50 minutes, Greg delivers apocalyptic dark ambient at its bitter best. Slowly evolving drones and highly atmospheric waves of darkness with this release as you are taken headlong into this catastrophic event. For the most part, this is not a soothing ride at all, like most dark ambient music. No, this is the end of the fucking world. As such, some noisier characteristics do appear, although I personally don't find them to be too grating or harsh on my tinnitus-ridden ears, but rather they provide a feeling of completely giving up and realizing that the end is near. Of course, this album does have its slower, more sinister, slow, creeping moments, but perhaps that's just life flickering out. It's a bit of a shame, but Terra Sancta never quite got the attention it deserves. However, this is good news for you, since this album, like the others mentioned in this video, can easily be obtained for under $10. Greg ceased activities in 2015. I'm not sure if he's done any other music since then. Well, that'll do it for this video. I do hope you check out these albums, as I do fully believe these are fantastic, underrated offerings that are very much worth your time and even worth adding to your physical collection of music. Thanks, as always, for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do the like, share, and comment thing. Doing so helps the video reach more people and lets Skynet know that people are enjoying it and want to see more. Thank you. Have a good day.